Ladies and gentlemen of the media, welcome to the PVP Weekly Press Conference. I hope you had a wonderful Emancipation Day and back re-energized. Come back to report factually. Right, Adam?
Yeah, man, we have this.
Okay, with me this morning as usual is our General Secretary. He'll be reading a statement after which we'll be taking questions. Yes?
Yes, good morning. The People's Progressive Party strongly condemns the attempts by the Starbuck News to deliberately spread misinformation and distortions about the facts surrounding the non-holding of the long overdue local government elections. The party has noted the newspaper page 1 comments, and its attempts to besmirch the party and government by continuously printing comments and statements from the opposition, political parties and other entities which are closely aligned to the parliamentary combined opposition parties. Starbuck News has been transformed into a political organ and therefore can no longer refer to itself as an independent daily newspaper. Its postures on critical issues pertaining to local government elections has exposed its efforts at fulfilling the wishes of politicians opposed to the PPP party and government. By utilizing its front page, the Starbuck News is pursuing a hardline political agenda against the government by publishing statements and even making declarations about the need for local government elections, without sufficiently publishing the facts surrounding the delay in holding of these elections. The PVP is of the firm view that the Starbuck News is in serious breach of the journalistic ethics governing the industry by adopting an outright biased position, thus placing the newspaper objectively on the side of the political opposition. It's for this reason that we believe that the classification of the newspaper as an opposition media is justified, as it continues to neglect and downplay the government's explanations as to why these elections have not been held and why they cannot be held, why they cannot be called with haste. The Starbuck News has ignored the party's mounting concerns about the state of preparedness of the Guyana Elections Commission to hold elections in a fair and free manner without causing widespread disenfranchisement to thousands of Guyanese. In light of these developments, the PPP found it necessary to formulate and publish, for the benefit of readers, a background brief on the holding of local government elections in Guyana. We have attached this background brief on the holding of local government elections, beginning with the postponement of local government elections in 1997, and then followed by the holding of general and regional elections in 1997. The elections had to be postponed because of the holding of general and regional elections in 1997. And then what took place after the elections in 1997, when the opposition took to the streets, and you had the introduction of the Hermanson Accord, which was brokered, which laid the basis for constitutional reform between 1998 and 2001. Within that reform process, the question of local government reform was undertaken before local government elections could be held. It is to be recalled that a local government task force was established between 2001 and 2008 of a bipartisan nature, and they were tasked with the responsibility of providing new laws for the holding of local government elections. That task force worked for 9 years, and finally in 2008 indicated to the President and the then opposition leader, Mr. Corbyn, that it had completed most of its mandate, but not all. And that, notwithstanding that situation, there still remained a lack of consensus on a number of issues. The bills were taken to a select committee in 2009 at the National Assembly, and it labored in that select committee for a number of years. Then, eventually, the Attorney General's chambers was sought, assistance was sought in connection with the tabling of the following bills: the Local Government Elections Amendment Bill, the Local Government Commission Bill, the Local Government Amendment Bill, the Fiscal Transfers Bill, and the Municipal and District Councils Amendment Bill. All these bills went before this Parliamentary Select Committee. And the first bill that was completed was the Local Government Authorities Elections Amendment Bill. And this bill was assented to the President in 2009 and paved the way for GCOM to commence preparation for the holding of local government elections. Subsequently, preparations for the holding of local government elections between 2007 and 2010 began. In 2008 of January, GCOM commenced the new house-to-house registration exercise in preparation for a new NRR, that is a National Register of Registrants database. That obviously took some time. The signing of a MOU by the political parties in the presence of the diplomatic corps took place at the office of the President. And by 2010, the PVP indicated it was ready to move forward, having regard to the commitment to democracy. Between January and February 2010, claims and objections paid for local government elections commented, and then the President assented to the Local Authorities Elections Amendment Bill in September 2009. And this paved the way for GCOM to move on with the holding of local government elections. Bills had to be retabled in the National Assembly, in the 10th Parliament, in June 2011. Remember, there was elections, in June 2012. There were elections in 2011, which resulted in a further postponement and delay of the process. The bills had to be retabled in the National Assembly, in the 10th Parliament, in June 2012, within the so-called quote-unquote new dispensation. 4 bills had to be updated on the basis of the work of the Select Committee, and these were retabled in the Parliament between June and July 2012. The bills were referred to a Select Committee, where now you had the opposition in the majority, and that Select Committee this time was chaired by Mr. Bassel Williams. Of course, anything under the chairmanship of Mr. Bassel Williams will be subject to manipulation, delay, and lack of taking advice, etc., and paying attention to the existing legal framework for local government elections. This resulted in some of the bills that Select Committee settled was unacceptable due to the fact that the contents conflicted with the existing laws, including the Constitution. That Select Committee completed its work in July of 2013, before the recess last year. The bills that have so far been assented to by His Excellency the President include the Local Authorities Amendments Bill, the Local Government Commission Bill, the Fiscal Transfer Bill, the Municipal and District Council Amendment Bill. What is the current situation? The PVP and the government is concerned over the manner in which the opposition are treating with the nation's business. One can only hope that we will not have a repeat of 1997, where GCOM will be forced to commence preparation for national and regional elections, and once again have to delay the holding of local government elections as a result of the tricks played by the opposition party. Meanwhile, the Minister of Local Government has repeatedly explained why these elections must be held. The majority of Guyanese residing in local authorities are expecting these elections, and the PVP has said that it is ready for these elections. Thank you.
Thanks, Jess. That was the statement. Now we're looking for questioning.
Yes, sir.
Adam?
Sir, why is it that you and the party insist on labeling opposition media because they dare to criticize one aspect of the government? In this case, Stabrook News attacked the refusal to hold local government and ran a series of front page things, and you say the label of opposition media is justified.
Well, I hope that implicit in your question is the claim or the view that when newspapers publish certain things which they have a right to, except it being libelous, that a political party shouldn't have the right to reply or to deal with it.
That is true. You have
So
the right to
that is
reply.
what we're doing here now. The Sabbath News is free to, any newspaper in fact, is free to publish whatever they feel. iNews, anybody is free to publish what they feel is publishable and not libelous. But we reserve the right to challenge anything that we consider harmful to the party's interests. And that is precisely what we're doing. This is a democracy.
Right down to putting a label on that
It doesn't matter where is the label.
opposition media.
I don't consider that a label. That's not a label. That may be how you describe it, but I don't necessarily agree with you when you say that. That's our political characterization of the newspaper. And any other media house that we deem as such, we will say such. If you want to claim it's a label, well, or a tag, well, we can't stop you from saying that, but then I would say that's how we characterize the newspaper. It's carrying a political campaign right now on local government elections. That's as far as we could see.
Yes.
Jess, you said that anything under the leadership of Mr. Williams reflects manipulation and non-acceptance of advice. Does that extend to the situation with the select committee reviewing the AML bill right now? The House goes into recess this week.
Well, I
FATF
think
will come in October, and we don't
I
exactly have
I think I use the word whenever Mr. Williams.
Yeah.
It's typical of Mr. Williams.
Right.
Well, that pertains to that too.
Well, what is the party's position on the continued delay, given that by the time the House comes out of recess, FATF will already be here?
Yes, that is true, but that means that we will be working nevertheless. The government has a responsibility to respond to FATF. The team that will be coming here for the targeted review. So work will continue. And then when Parliament resumes, when Parliament comes out to the recess, that will open up a new front for another political struggle at the parliamentary level.
Sir, isn't it unusual that, well, from 1997 to now, it's what, 17 years? 17 long years. And we can't hold elections, and you've offered a series of reasons, all relating to the protests and the general elections. The protests in this country never lasted for more than 3 months at the maximum. And general elections have been coming 5 years apart. Between 1997 and now, we've had 2. So how could those things really stall the holding of local government elections?
I'm surprised. The point that I'm making is that there seems to be a view out there that is peddled by certain media houses that the People's Progressive Party and the government is the sole party that is responsible for the non-holding of local government elections. That's the point I'm seeking to make here. People seem to be riding this hobby horse that the PPP is holding up local government elections. This brief that I refer to here gives a objective appraisal of the contributing factors that led to the non-holding of local government elections in this country thus far. It is not the People's Progressive Party that has ever held up the holding of local government elections. Incidentally, you said the protest didn't last long. It's not the question of how long the protest lasts, the question of the impact and the effects and the aftermath of the protests, which led to constitutional reforms. And one of the issues that had to be reformed on a constitutional basis was local government elections. So it doesn't matter how long the protest lasts. That's not the key issue. Was what arose as a result of the process, of the protests. And this is one of them. And then the parliamentary process too, which moves at a very slow pace, as you know. It had to go through all these different select committee processes, debated. What does the PBP have to do with holding up the elections if that is the objective process that flowed from the constitutional reform? It has nothing to do with the PBP. We didn't set up the Hardman Accord. That was imposed upon us. So, and the Hardman Accord said that this is the process that must follow, following the recommendations that were made.
Chad Rockshore from today. Yes, given what we've seen taking place in Parliament, how optimistic are you that...
Given what?
What we've seen taking place in Parliament.
What have we seen taking place? I don't know what you are seeing, but I might be seeing something differently.
How optimistic are you that the anti-money laundering legislations will be passed this year?
I'm not very optimistic. I'm not very optimistic because the opposition has thrown down the gauntlet on the matter, and they're using that bill as a negotiating, as a bargaining chip, which we totally reject.
And how do you intend to address the situation?
Parliamentary struggle and extra parliamentary struggle.
Can you go into details?
Parliamentary struggle means fighting tooth and nail in the parliament, exposing the opposition in the parliament, putting motions and bills that makes it difficult for the opposition to reject. Extra parliamentary struggle means walking among the people, walking in the streets, the villages and the towns, mobilizing our supporters, non-supporters, friends and well-wishers, to sensitize them with respect to our positions, not only in the parliament, but outside of the parliament. So it's a combination of both fronts on which we are working.
Just can you say if the party's been informed on, or whether or not the EFC will move ahead with its no confidence motion if there's a sitting on Thursday?
Whether who has been informed?
If the party's been informed, anything through the chief whip
Informed by,
about the the possibility.
no,
of a
informed by
confidence?
who?
The clerk.
Huh?
The clerk of the National Assembly, Mr. Isaacs.
No, PPP hasn't received anything from Mr. Isaacs on the question of the no confidence motion. I saw something in the newspapers today where they are haggling backward and forward like a bazaar in Kabul on the matter.
Do you think it'll come before the recess?
Pardon?
Do you think it'll come before the recess?
Well, a lot depends on the APNU, and from what I understand, it doesn't seem to me that Mr. Granger is ready to go along with that, because it was never discussed in the Congress. Other things were, other events took place at the Congress, gunshots, you know, picketings, shouting and fighting,
Right.
and you know, I dare say that were those things that happened at the PPP Congress. Heaven help me. Starbuck News, Kaicho News, iNews would have gone to tongue on that.
On the parties, last week you said that the party was looking at a motion against misuse and Mr. Ramstein.
Mm-hmm.
Any updates on how far along that is coming?
Well, the matter is now with the Presidential Advisor on Governance, who is our chief whip. The party, having made a statement, is in consonance with what she is doing, and obviously we're working in tandem with each other. So it is now in the hands of our chief whip to move the process forward.
With regards to the AFC's no confidence motion, do you think that they're bluffing?
If they're bluffing, I think only they could answer that question. I think you should ask Mr. Trotman and Mr. What's his name?
Ramstein. Moses Ramstein.
The two persons who we put before the select committee, I think you should ask them those questions. I wouldn't call the other man's name because I don't really like the taste of the sound of his voice coming out of my mouth.
Mr. Hannah Duncan, HGP Nightly News. Just
8GP?
Yeah.
Oh,
Right
okay.
in front of them, Just for clarification purposes,
Mm.
you sought to revert, the Home Affairs Ministry rather, has sought to revert the whole birth certificate process you had there. The last implementation you reverted that. Mr. Harmon of the APNU did indicate that we spoke with him last week, and he said the Home Affairs Ministry basically didn't know what it was about when it made that change. Do you care to respond to that? Or would you like to set the record straight, give us some clarification on the whole process there also at the same time?
When we moved from 6 months to 2 years, it was in an effort to appease the general population and those who felt that those timelines were unhelpful to them. It had nothing to do with the process in the courts. Nothing to do with that. We take our decisions independent of what the courts are doing because, I've said time and again that we are not in concubinage with the courts. So the courts are free to pronounce on their own processes, and we are free to make our own determinations as well. So when we decided to shift from the six months to the 2 years, as I said, it was aimed at appeasing the general population and the trials and tribulations which some applicants were going through. In addition to that, that process, had placed some additional pressure on the GRO. So, having regard and taking into consideration all those factors, we then decided to review the matter once again. You see, listen,
But if you think about
just a
this
minute,
before-
just a minute. What do you mean if we talked about it before?
And you made the man be laugh.
What do you mean if we thought about it before? We're not dum-dums, as some people are trying to make out. Before we arrived at the 6 months, of course, we sat with the police, we sat with many other stakeholders, and we discussed it. This is not a decision where Clement Rowe, he wakes up one morning and at breakfast decides on something. You see, government ministries do not make decisions whimsically. They do not. Because it's a position that you go with out there, and it has to be tested. So before you make any decision, you better make sure that it's a well thought out decision before putting out in the public. Now, it doesn't mean to say that you have all the answers, but at least you had the courage to make a decision. And you live with those decisions, you fall with those decisions. Having put out the 6 month timeline, we saw the response from the public. We didn't consult with the public before we put out the 6 month timeline. You right? So we put out the 6 month timeline, we got a response, we assessed that response, and then we decided to move to 2 years because the GRO felt that 2 years would take the pressure off of them because their system is clean up to a particular point in time. And so we went with that. Additionally, the police felt that that was a good move as well. All these parties are usually consulted. I have 3 C's that I usually adhere to in making ministerial decisions: consultation, coordination, and communication. Those are the 3 C's that guides me in making decisions, at least at Home Affairs. After we put it the 2 years, we found that there were still questions being asked. And you recall that I had said that the Ministry of Home Affairs had told the police, the Chief Immigration Officer, who is the Commissioner of Police, when the machine-readable passports were introduced, that they must insist on a new or a birth certificate for new applicants of a particular time frame. They didn't do that. They did not do it. So what do? Do we beat up on the police? We just made a criticism that they just didn't do it, and we move on. Okay, we decided, as I told them, I said, look, let's remove all these restrictions, take the birth certificates, false or genuine, because I can tell you, there are probably hundreds of false birth certificates moving around this country. There are hundreds of false birth certificates moving around this country. People pay outside of the GRO process to get a false birth certificate for different reasons. For different reasons. And the whole idea behind ensuring that a passport, especially machine-readable passport, which is supposed to have much more security features than the ordinary passport that we had before, the non-machine readable. The whole idea behind that exercise was to ensure the integrity of the passport, because if I've stolen someone's identity by inserting a wrong birth date, a wrong place of birth, a wrong mother, this is the thing, the 4 factors: place of birth, date of birth, mother, and father. People change place of birth. People change. I don't mean they change it because they've moved. I mean they change it because they want something to happen with that as a result of that wrong information in birth certificate. So they insert a different name change. I mean they insert a different name, the mother's name, father's name, place of birth, and date of birth. Those are the 4 key pieces of information in any birth certificate. Now, once they do that and they present that false birth certificate to the passport office, if you do not check, then you know what will happen? You will be perpetuating that false or stolen identity over and over again, because that same information that is wrongly inserted in this false birth certificate without checks will go into a new passport. And so you will have the perpetuating of that false identity or that stolen identity. This is what it was all about. So we say, bring whatever, whosoever will may come, false or genuine birth certificate, and we will do the internal checking, but we can't guarantee you'll get it within a week. We can't guarantee you'll get it within a week. Remember, we move it from 1 month to 2 weeks and then a week. Sabu Karam.
Any other question?
Yes, you go ahead. I was wondering if we could move back to the National Assembly.
Yeah.
The last time we touched on the Parliamentary Security Oversight Committee. Mr. Trotman said that, okay, we're going to have a meeting before the recess. The last update we had with him, he said it won't be possible. And what were your comments on the continued delay, given that this is something that, you know, it's years long?
Well, I think from the information that I have, it seems to me that the APNU is not interested in having a sitting before the recess. So, you know, even if we want to call a sitting of the Parliament before the recess, the APNU and the joint opposition could say they don't want a sitting of the House because they have a majority. According with the standing orders, they could say together they're not interested in a sitting.
The Parliamentary Security Oversight Committee.
Well, the Parliamentary Security Oversight Committee, that's a very critical body. It amazes me that a man like Mr. Granger, who professes to be this big sahib on security matters, is not interested in such a committee meeting. I think it will do him and the opposition well if this Parliamentary Oversight Committee meets, because, as I said, you know, that body is free to call all and sundry before it to give evidence. The Commissioner of Police, any member of the police force, the GDF leader, any member of the Guyana Defense Force, any member of any of the security, in the security or intelligence community, they're free to call those people to provide them with information. The minister can also be summoned to go before that select committee, the PS of the Ministry of Home Affairs and so on. So I don't understand how all these experts, so to speak, on security matters wouldn't want a body like that to be functioning. It tells me a big story that they have other political agendas, not to tie themselves down to that committee, but to have the freedom to run around like a headless chicken, you know, spouting matters on security when it's not being discussed within a parliamentary framework. And I think that's the best framework in which it should be discussed. Incidentally, talking about Mr. Harman, my good friend from HGGP, Halagala, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I saw him making a statement about I think it was in the Kaichou News. Let me take a thing of the Kaichou News now, having taken a dig at the Sabbath News. The Kaichou News published an article, interview, I think, or was it? Yeah, I think it was the Kaichou News. You're famous for doing those things. About the Prime Minister in Trinidad and Tobago getting rid of scamps or something like that, while here they are being, I don't recall exactly what they wanted. Here they're being promoted, some words to that effect. Well, let me say this to Mr. Harmon, through you, ladies and gentlemen. You know, I once read V.S. Naipaul's Mimic Men, and it seems to me that Mr. Harmon is one of those mimic men. One thing I can assure you, that the PPPC and the PPPC government are not mimic men. Are not mimic men.
Yes. Being on the Culture News. As you're on that topic.
Which one of them?
Well, the Mimic Men. The story we have in today's paper. What I would like to know exactly is, do you have cases in your party where persons were demoted for irresponsible behavior?
If we have what?
Any cases within the
Oh,
party?
cases in our party.
Or in the government where persons were demoted?
Well, let us draw a distinction here. I cannot speak for the government. When I sit at these press conferences, I speak for the People's Progressive
But
Party.
you just spoke on the passport issue.
That's because I'm the Minister of Home Affairs.
And you're
I'm
also
not going.
part of the
I am.
government.
Please, I'm
Okay.
not going to speak broadly on government issues here. I think there's a forum for that, which is at Chief Chandrapal Drive, if that is what it's called, a place in the office of the President, a weekly press conference with head of the Presidential Secretariat. When I sit here as PPP General Secretary, and if I choose to take up the other hat, Minister of Home Affairs.
All right.
In your capacity as PVP General Secretary,
Okay.
are there any cases in the PVP where members were demoted for irresponsible behavior?
Yes, there are
Could
cases.
you cite some of those cases?
No, I wouldn't cite them here or now, but I can say yes, there are cases. When you say demoted, we have a different connotation
Sanction?
of what that means. Yes, we have a process in our party called criticism and self-criticism, where members are criticized and steps taken in accordance with our disciplinary committee to deal with such individuals or comrades, so to speak. Comrades.
And as Home Affairs Minister, sir, has any government department recommended to your ministry, to your department, to the Guyana Police Force, any attempt to prosecute any government official on the grounds of corruption?
Well, I don't think we're the ministry that such recommendations should come to. I think it could probably go to the ombudsman.
But he's been there for a while.
Well, he's here now.
Yeah, but before him.
No. But I don't think it's the Ministry of Home Affairs that such entreaties should be directed.
But given your relationship with the president, and I know how the president would talk to you, he would say,
You know?
Clement, yeah,
No, excuse me?
I tell you, he said, I know the man and I know you. And the man would sit down and say, Clement, look, I got this thing. You walk. He won't call with the boy name, Silal Prasad.
With the boy?
Silal is a little boy for me. I can call all them boys.
No, well, I'm not going to associate myself with that.
No, but he wouldn't call.
I'm sitting here.
All right. I notice you and like this word boy.
I am sitting here in official capacity.
Yes, sir.
And if you see these people sitting around this table, they're listening very carefully. If I associate myself with those labels and those tags, I might very well find myself.
He wouldn't call the commissioner of police. The President Ramotar would call you and say, Clement, this XY, go after it. Has he ever done that, sir?
From time to time, yes. I wouldn't disclose those things. That's a matter between myself and the President.
I know. But you won't tell me who he sent you after.
Who send me after?
Yeah, who would have been the party that sent it?
No, man, those things are done like that, man. The President don't send the Minister of Home Affairs after somebody. The way you're putting it as though,
All right.
you know,
Mr. Roy, some months ago you set up an in-house integrity commission. I can't recall at the moment what you called it. Pardon?
Integrity and Disciplinary Commission.
That.
Mm.
How is that going?
It's going
How many
pretty well.
cases?
It's going pretty well. Remember that is a matter where only PPP people can bring something against a PPP person.
Oh, so I can't bring something.
No.
You
You're
can
not-
join the party.
You gotta join the party
I
first.
have a party chair.
You gotta join the party first. And you gotta have a membership card with being a financial member.
Okay. Secondly, they had a media parliament workshop some 2 weeks ago, which the government did not attend. Subsequently, the Speaker of the National Assembly launched a book on the parliament, and he invited the government as well. The opposition showed up, civil society showed up, but the government didn't. Is there somewhat of a boycott against him? And how is the PPP viewing his performance so far as a speaker?
Well, one thing I can assure you of, there's not a girl cut.
That's why I didn't say girl cut, I asked if there's a boycott.
Oh, okay. No, there's nothing official to that effect. The government took a decision that it will not participate in the workshop. And if you read the book carefully, you will see where I personally contributed a photograph in that book. You will see in that book there's a photograph there with Dr. Jagan removing the mace from in front of the speaker. And it says compliments of Mr. Clement Rohi. So,
Were you invited to that board?
I don't recall, maybe I was, maybe I don't recall, but there's so many invitations, it's almost impossible to go to everything.
We understand you're an important man. And the second
No, it has
part-
nothing to do with that. It's just that there's so many invitations.
Okay, the second part of the question, how do you view his performance so far?
Performance of who?
The Speaker of the National Assembly, Raphael Chapman. Or Raphael,
I would leave that to the collective, to the party, to a collective assessment to be made by the party. I wouldn't want to.
But hasn't been made so far?
Pardon?
A collective assessment hasn't been made by the party?
Of the speaker?
Yeah.
Well, that necessity hasn't arisen for us to do that.
Oh, so he's doing well. Okay.
No. Excuse me. No, I didn't say that. I answered your question. I said what I said, that we haven't made any collective assessment of the speaker's performance.
Minister, at the opening of the forensic laboratory, we did note that talks would have been ongoing with the IDB and the government of Ghana to offer DNA testing in the near future. That did came out from the opening. Can you say how those talks are going and how soon we might be able to expect?
Well, let me correct you there. There's a formulation. It's not for the IDB to make an offer for DNA testing. The government of Guyana, long before this laboratory was completed, at the Ministry of Home Affairs, I did say that I was given instruction by the President to examine the prospects of addressing DNA testing within the laboratory that we're building now. That was examined and it was found to be, at the time and even after the completion, not the best route to go. Now we're going into what is called a Citizen Security Program 2. We had a CSP 1, now we negotiated with the bank a CSP 2. Within that CSP 2, we are negotiating the prospects of introducing DNA testing, again, linked to this laboratory, whether there will be an additional building or whether the lab itself will be upgraded by virtue of its equipment and the training of the personnel. For that to happen, that is what we're currently discussing, because the question of the cost. Recall, there's a ceiling of the loan, okay, which we're currently negotiating with the IDB. There's a ceiling. And we have to ensure that we have maximum benefits out of this loan, so that we understand that the introduction of DNA testing at this laboratory might probably consume more than 3/4 of the loan, because it's a very expensive exercise. It's not just putting in 2 or 3 pieces that they are building a cake shop next door. what we have decided to do based on the discussion with the IDB is, first of all, to work towards ISO standards for the forensic laboratory. Once we get ISO compliance for the forensic laboratory, then we move to the next stage, as I just described.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all very much.
Yeah.